Coach Singleton, ho ho ho, Merry Christmas. Thanks for joining me today on this Simple Coach to Coach. Clearly your Christmas and my Christmas are two differing things because you look very comfortable outside and maybe hitting the beach later on. But thank you very much for taking the time during the holiday season. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Happy to be here.
Hey, so let's just jump right into it, and to talk about your 2023. I'm just wondering if you can give me your thoughts on how you think the overall season went. How you it was a good season. You came up short, obviously, in the semis of the national tournament, which I think was really good getting there. But yeah, just curious as to how you see the overall season went.
Well, it's interesting. We had a sort of ups and downs during the season a lot. Some key injuries, even at the beginning of the NCAA tourney and the conference tournament as well. And we graduated so much last year. That was the big question coming into this year that I think everybody, even my players, were asking themselves. But I think, coming into the year, some of the returners were kind of trying to be the players who graduated, and that doesn't work. So once we got them to understand we're a different team and we have to do some different things, and you guys are great players in your own way, and let's own that, the guys started to perform really well. And I was just really proud of the guys overall when I look back at the season, because, for these seniors, it's a senior class that had lost two key players over the time period for sort of things that we can't control in life. And for them to make it back a second time, and I'm just really proud of them, and sort of just really thankful that, they kind of led the charge and got the underclassmen to buy in the same way that they had to when they were young, and it worked out to be a pretty good season for us.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of teams who would have traded places with you.
Little over 400.
yeah, 400 and 10 maybe in that area. Hey, I'm just curious because I don't know if I captured it accurately. I watched you early on in the season, and it seemed to me like, I don't want to say you started off slow. You lost to Oglethorpe. You tied Emory. I mean, both of those two teams are really good. So I'm not disqualifying the challenge that it was to play them. And then you tied Stockton. I mean, was there something going on? Was that part of those ups and downs that you think, or was it just because it's a new season and you're trying to sort that stuff out?
I'd say there's some interesting stuff. Beginning of the year, we couldn't hit a PK to save our life. Seems we finished off that way too. So maybe it was just us being us. Early signs.
That should have been an omen. You should have been practicing since then.
It was actually funny because in both those games at Oglethorpe and Emory, we had the better at play, and we missed PKs. And a 1-0 game and a 0-0 game, and it just would have been a difference maker for us. But at the same point, it was. I think that's the time when the guys were really trying to sort out, when you lose someone like a Michael Kutzenzera and a Sam Bass, and some of those other guys were thinking, oh, I'm going to be him. Yeah. And it was just, they're not, and they're different, and they have different strengths. And it took us some time to get to the point where they were understanding, this group and these groups of players, this is what we can do really well. And that's very different from what we did last year, but we could be better for it. And I kept telling the guys, we're a better defensive team. No question in my mind that overall we're better defensive because we didn't have the jokers running around and creating havoc everywhere. I was like, and we're a better passing team. Is guys in general were moving off the ball better, staying in their shape better, so we were able to have better passing and sort of share the wealth a little bit more. And we had good team speed, so building into our counterattack and recognizing we had to transition quickly was something that they grew into very well and started really understanding how to use the assets that we did have. So I think it was early in the season, really just, you know, guys figuring out who they needed to be successful this year. Because we graduated 13 players.
Yeah, yeah. I
I mean,
remember you saying that you had a pretty big class.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, you look at it like 3 All Americans we graduate,
yeah,
13 players. I think there were 6 All Conference players
yeah,
amongst them. So,
yeah,
so I think you're going to be a different team,
yeah,
and figuring out what that is and making sure that everybody buys in and gets on the same page is very important. And I think during the stretch of the season down late October and into November, as a coach, you couldn't ask for anything more from the guys. They really were doing what we asked and following the scouting report and the game plan and executing extremely well. And that's kind of something we say at the beginning of the year. We got to be playing our best soccer in late October, early November.
yeah, yeah.
So, although we had some bumps in the road and some times when it was really frustrating, and I think probably one of the most, I would say, effortful coaching seasons I put in to get us there. It's just awesome when I look back
Yeah.
at, particularly those guys who are moving on. I just feel so happy for them.
It's interesting, right? When you lose players, it creates a gap, but it also creates a gap for other players to grow into and a team to adapt to a different situation. And I'm not saying this is a bad thing. It's just I think it's the nature of it. Some players tend to dominate a little bit more through force of personality or what they're capable of. And then when you remove them, all of a sudden, when they realize it, a team can become a much better sum of its parts, right? And play that way. And it sounds like that was a little bit of the case for you. Is that fair
Yeah.
to say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Less superheroes, more teamwork.
Yeah. And so by the end of the season, do you think you were playing like your best soccer? The end of I'll just say the regular season.
I'd say at the end of the regular season, we had one of our best games. I mean, we really took it to Lynchburg and
Yeah.
dominated them, beat them 4 goals, and so I was really happy with that. And then we played the first game of our conference tournament, and we lose our starting center back, and we lose a starting center midfielder, and suddenly we're in patchwork mode.
Yeah.
To be honest, the first weekend of the NCAA tournament, if you were to tell me that, I mean, our whole defense was different from what we had played later in the tournament and what we preferred to play. And I had a walk-on player playing in the center of the park that first weekend, a walk-on freshman. So when I look at it, I'm like, man, we won 2 good games. Oneonta's a perennial team in there, and a very strong program. And in that game, I just will say that's kind of when the guys really stepped up to me, because the 2 wingers for Oneonta are really good players. They're both individually very dangerous, and that was our target. I said, I don't think they'll have another person who can find a way to beat us if we take away those 2 guys. And both outside backs really did a great job of locking people down and making it work. And one of the outside backs was an outside midfielder who was just filling in an outside back because I had to shift someone else. So I give the guys a lot of props, because they really executed in that game. And I think that's really what gave the guys the confidence the next weekend is, we had a patchwork defense and a patchwork midfield that first weekend. And then to get the guys back and to be able to come in close to full strength for that Sweet 16 weekend, the guys' confidence just shot through the sky.
Yeah. That you're right. SUNY Oneonta, those 2 guys were some of the best, probably the best paired forwards that I watched all year, because they read each other so well. And it's not like you're if you keep an eye on one and you forget the other, you're in trouble, right? Like it's one of those situations. So to lock down 2 guys or 2 main guys that's pretty awesome, especially for guys who never played the role before.
Yeah,
Like, you know,
exactly.
like, oh wow, it's pretty novel, right? Um, how big of a deal was that Tufts game for you?
Um, to me, it was another game. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't bigger than others. It was a Sweet 16 game, so that made it big. It was at
Mm-hmm.
Tufts, which made it big. Um, but you know, if you look at my current team and their current team, we're better.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
you know, they're good, great people there. You know,
yeah.
I respect their coaching staff a great deal. I think they have
Yeah.
some great players, but at the end of the day, if you look the past 2 or 3 years, we've outperformed them.
Yeah.
So I think it's funny because it's similar with Messiah and Tufts that because they won a lot of championships, people are thinking of when they won a lot of championships.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
but
fair. That's a good point.
it's today's team, and that's the
Yeah.
thing. You know, in 2021 when we were playing Messiah in the Elite Eight, that's what I told my guys. I'm like, there's not one player on this field who's been to the Final Four.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, there people in the past have been, but not people currently playing.
I, I have to say that game, it struck me. The one thing that struck me was just the two different styles. I think you were so much better in possession of the ball, with a lot more purpose, than I thought Tufts was. I thought Tufts can shellac anybody on a good day, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and they go after the game, and they're always constantly fighting to win the ball. But I thought the way you guys I thought you took a lot of energy out of them by in your possession, and I don't know if they have that ability. It's not in their DNA to do something similar. I think their DNA is I'm going to get another goal. That's how I'm going to put you to. That's how I'm going to take wind out. Is I'm going to get another goal, and so again, not a bad thing. I'm a big fan of Coach Desatel, so
I think
just
the
an interesting
second half,
contrast to me.
yeah, like that first 25 minutes of the second half really changed the game.
Yeah,
I thought both teams were playing kind of nervous, probably us
yeah,
a bit more nervous than them in the first half, quite
mm-hmm.
honestly.
Yeah,
But in that first 20, 25 minutes of the second half, I mean, we were all over them, and I
yeah,
even heard the guys yelling over to Kyle, like, we can't get out of our half. What do we need to
yeah,
do?
yeah,
And that's kind of when I just sort of felt the tenor of the game
yeah,
change.
yeah, yeah,
That's when, and then when we get the goal, obviously our guys really believe and can play with
yeah,
confidence where they're now climbing uphill.
yeah,
And I thought they hit a lot of crosses, but,
yeah.
you know, that's okay with us. We can take crosses.
Yeah, yeah. You got some big guys in the middle that can deal with that sort of stuff, right? So if you're
Yep.
a team of midgets, right, or trolls, as trees are trolls, right? I'd rather have trees in the center of the box than trolls. But all right, so let's go to that. Can we talk a little bit about Colorado College that went to PKs? I was really
Sure.
impressed with Colorado College, by the way. I thought they
They're very
played.
good.
When I watched them, I think I watched them mid-season because they had started, right, like making some noise with some of their results, and couldn't help but be impressed with how they played. And how do you think that game went for you? Especially after the anytime you beat Tufts, I think is a big win, right? But
Yeah.
at that level, Sweet 16, all the emotion that probably went into that game.
Right.
Did you feel it that against
I think
Colorado
that was
College?
the biggest challenge in the first half of that Colorado College game is there was this emotional fatigue
Yeah,
in a bunch of my guys. And if you look at someone like Mateo Adler, who was a complete stud against Tufts, and then he was kind of like a ghost at Colorado College, and he just
Yeah.
didn't have more in the tank.
yeah,
And so I think we're thankful to get two halftime 0-0. And then again, I thought we started playing better in the second half and really sort of putting pressure on them and forcing them to try to do things as well. And so, that was a game too where, boy, did we have chances. I mean, boy, did we have chances to score. But I was really happy with our team defense, and we sort of we kept disciplined, and even though we were really pushing for a goal, we didn't expose ourselves. And
Yeah.
I think that was, very smart of my guys. And thankfully that day, the PKs were working. So,
Yeah. Those ones worked.
yeah.
You'd been training for them all season, right? Like that's what happens when you
Well,
miss a
the
few.
funny thing is, like, I think in the last 3 weeks, everyone has taken at least like 50 to 80 PKs.
Uh,
And it's been something that we've really focused on. Just be yourself. Just do it.
yeah,
And so,
yeah.
you know.
D- and now you know you're going to you're going to the semis against Amherst. Is there anything? Did you prepare? I mean, was there anything special that you had planned at that point, or you're just sort of like, this is how we play, this is how we're going to play it, and we're going to do the, I don't want to say same thing over again, but that's what we're, yeah, right.
For us, it's, obviously you want your guys to really make sure that they don't lose their temper and they stay composed. And that was a big part of what we sort of got ready for. But it was also because of their press and because the way they press, we knew they had some vulnerabilities defensively and we wanted to attack those. So we talked about the areas of the field that we thought we could attack and how we could go about sort of taking advantage of things. And I think the guys, once we got over the nerves, started to execute very well. But I do think they played a bit nervous in the first half, and we had to, I don't know, just realize it's just another game. And,
Yeah.
And given we had already sort of beaten Tufts, who was competing with Amherst to be the best team in NESCAC, it's, hey, it's just, it's what you do if you want to win a national title.
Yeah. I mean, were you nervous, worried, concerned about you go down 2 goals, which I tried to look. I don't know if you went down by 2 goals at all. I mean, the Lynchburg game in the ODAC final, I think, right? Like that was one game, but you go down by 2. Did you find yourself changing the way you played at all?
Actually, no. It was really just getting the guys to realize that they hadn't been playing our game and hadn't been doing the things that we like to do. Say for a few players, I thought our defenders had a lot of giveaways in the first half, and we weren't sort of connecting on extended possession very often. And so I really just talked to them about, we haven't done it. We haven't shown ourselves to be ourselves. And we got to go back with the confidence and realize that when we execute our game plan and we just behave the way that we've practiced, we're a very good team. When we move away from that is when we put ourselves in hard situations. And when you're at the national semifinal level, it's one of the things we talk about all the time. It's seconds and inches. You got to own the inches and the seconds. And I thought we gave away some inches and seconds, and then we climbed back, to the credit of the guys. But probably could have really valued a few of those seconds back, and it would have ended up differently for us.
Yeah. I thought you looked in the second half a different team. You ever have those games where you're like, oh, this is not just, I don't know what happened at halftime. They, great halftime talk, and then suddenly the team just shows up differently. And almost that was sort of my take from that game was how.
Yeah, I think it was an interesting one because I think even that early second goal they got, like if you talk to my guys, they'll tell you they just thought it was a smack in the face, and they're just like, we have nothing to lose. What are we doing here? And so a bit of frustration, but a bit of hey, we got to go after it now. And so I was happy with that response because some teams would have just kind of gone into their shell. But the guys responded really well and weren't rushing or forcing things. They were trying to create things, and I was really happy with their ability to get back to being the team that we wanted to be and doing the things that we espouse doing.
Yeah. It was really good. I like I said, I thought you're right. I watch you, and maybe that was the weird thing. Like, you watch you at different times, but I think I tend to generally watch the first halves, and I think a lot of your first half, I don't want to say we're slow, and against Amherst, like, again, you're in rarefied air, so I totally get that, but whether it's nerves or don't have that innate confidence or what have you, something has to happen to get to halftime, and then in the second half. But when you start that game, you're definitely worthy of a semifinal game, right? And because you're that good, right? I think just nationally, I think you're that good in comparison to other teams. It's just a matter of, can you do that for 90 minutes, right? Like, I think that's the trick. Okay, so can I just ask you? So you had 13 graduate last year.
Yeah.
What's your graduating class look like this year?
5. But it came in as actually 8. One was a walk-on player who ended up with a lot of injuries and decided to stop playing. Another one was a really good player, started as a freshman, Hayden Baring, who had persistent hip injuries and just couldn't feel healthy, and just was realizing he needed that.
That's the worst.
And then Adrian Zimmerman, had to leave school and be closer to his family, and so Hayden and Adrian, I mean, they started every game in the 2021 sort of Final Four season, and when you think of Hayden, probably would have been a 6 for us at this point, and Adrian, has a propensity to score goals in big moments.
Yeah.
So
it's
it
like
would have been
that
impactful.
uncanny knack.
Yeah, would have been interesting if we had those two guys into the mix.
Yeah.
But given that we didn't have them, that's one of the reasons I was really proud of the senior class as well, because they still pushed through. But it'll be a smaller graduating class. I think overall 2 senior starters.
Yeah.
But of the senior class, 3 who played regular minutes and a 4th who was a role player.
Yeah.
And then a backup keeper.
Yeah. Do you can any of those guys come back? Like, do they have an extra year or no?
All of them could, except our school doesn't have an NBA program. It only has a law school. So, and our law school doesn't really lend itself to athletes.
Yeah. And I wouldn't encourage anyone to become a lawyer, but that's just, I think I just, I don't think I should have said that. I'm going to bleep that out. That's a joke. That's a joke. What are your, I always ask you this, like, what are your plans for the spring? What do you have any, based on sort of where you were in the season, what you want to focus in on?
We'll really focus on, like, we grade every spring practice for every player, so that's a lot of feedback, so it's a lot of individual development time. But then we usually focus on 1 or 2 major tactical points for our team. And for us, it's probably going to be maintenance of shape on both sides of the ball. That's probably going to be our focus this year, because it really does come down to if we keep our discipline on both sides of the ball more, then we won't be talking about 2 different halves as much as we have to this year. And we could execute for greater durations of times within the 90 minutes, which is what I would think would make a big difference for us.
And then I'll, because I'm cognizant it's the holidays, so I definitely want you to sort of chill and enjoy, obviously. But last question for you. I mean, have you set your sights on the 2024 season yet, or is it still?
Well, I think us coaches have to have really short memories, or somewhat long memories, but short emotions to go with them, I guess is the way to look at it. And it's funny, like after this Final Four, my wife kind of put it best. She goes, in 2021, we were mad. This year we're sad.
Yeah.
So it was very different emotional
Yeah. Yeah.
experiences. You know, the 2021 kind of felt like, something was stolen from us.
Yeah.
Whereas in this one, it was like, we didn't quite get it done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
It came up short, like by your
so,
own, right? Yeah.
right. So it's a very different animal. But, you know, it's part of sports. There's only one winner at the end of the year. And I think if you had asked me, say, 2 months before, I would have told you if we make the Sweet 16, I'd think it was one of my best coaching jobs collegially.
Yeah.
And I would have been extremely proud. So to make the Final Four, that's big time. I just
Yeah,
give the guys a
yeah.
lot of props. And I'll always look back at the season fondly because we did lose a lot. And
Yeah.
we had a smaller team just numerically than I typically want. And we weathered very important injuries to players who were in key positions
Yeah.
at critical time periods and still progressed and pushed forward. And that's awesome. And that's awesome for the guys to experience and look back on too, is how, there's our first team all region center back who's not on the field, and there's a guy who does so much defense for us in the middle of the park and has an awesome outside shot and is a threat and is one of the best headers for us, and we can't have him on the field. And it was just, other guys stepping up, and that's really cool as a coach when you just see that, different people contributing and just, making the most of the time and the opportunities they're given.
Yeah. I love that too. Like that to me is that's a big thing when you see a player. Like you can push them so hard in a practice to get better, but there's something about that I need you now and to go into a game and you almost see like this exponential growth suddenly happen because they're in the thick of it and all those different. I personally love to see that. All right, so I just thought of another question I didn't ask you. Your recruiting class, are you done? You're done?
We got a good number of people in ED1, and now we're focused on the last couple or few in early decision 2. But it's going to be a really good class. And it's going to fill the areas that we need, very particularly filling the sort of spots that I felt we could have been better at.
Yeah.
So we're excited for it, and hopefully these last few sort of make it even better.
I think my application got lost in the mail or something because I have not heard back, and so. But I will let you know once I am accepted, so that you can extend me an offer. Have you noticed? You've always. I'm not. I don't. It's hard to say, right? Because you've been consistently good over a period of time, and so it might be old hat for you, but does it make recruiting the better players easier for you?
I think, without a doubt, because like in the earlier times, even at my current school, I had to tell people we were going to be good. And I had to get them to believe that. And, 17-year-olds are easily persuaded, so that's possible, and you can do that, quite easily. But, just when you look at the record now of sustained success, and you don't have to have those conversations, and you can legitimately say, look, you're going to be in the contention to win a national title. It's the question of if you're going to be the person to push us that one step further. And, so that's something that more, I think, people who are super competitive and sort of are enticed by the opportunity to do so, that resonates with them a little bit more easily. So I do think it's, where I have to introduce the program in school to less people now. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, no doubt. I always wonder about that. Like, and then I'm sure there are those players who are the complete contrarian. Why do I want to go a good school? I'm so good. I'm going to go to this other school, not so good. I'm going to turn it around, right? Because I can be the hero.
Right.
All right, so I got to ask you this, and I promise this will be the last one. it's not tryouts, but what are the things you're doing, especially because you like top to bottom. Like let's face it, like top to bottom, probably just about any player could go anywhere else, and at another school, maybe not as successful, and have an impact on the field, do whatever, all that stuff. And that's the way your roster is. I just think it's credit to you. But like what is your evaluation process? And this is my latest thing. What's your evaluation process during preseason to determine who you think your top, making up a number, 15 guys are going to be, right? Or 17, whatever it is that you to sort of become the core of your team. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, we do a lot of stuff like where we're giving people opportunities to differentiate themselves. So like the first day of our preseason is always the same, where the first thing they do is the beep test, and they have to get a certain standard to continue to practice. The next thing they do is a 1v1 competition, World Cup style, until we have one winner of the whole team.
Yeah.
Then we have sprint races, and then that evening it's always the newbies versus the returners in uniform on the game field. And I'll supplement the newbies with a couple sort of sophomores to help them out. But they're just given opportunity to say, I'm here. And that's kind of what we say to them, and what everybody knows is it's a new year. So what you did last year doesn't really matter anymore. It's what you're doing right now. And win them. Win the 1v1. Win the beat test. Win the sprint race. Win the game. And then as we typically are starting with defense in preseason, but everything is winners and losers. And we're trying to see who, quite honestly, finds a way to win. Because that's a big thing that we're looking at. It's, whatever the scenario you're put in, if you're a good competitor and you have a good competitive mind and you can manipulate most scenarios into your favor, that's a big quality. And that's what, our returners do a good job of maintaining the intensity in practice and making it extremely competitive and pushing people. But that is the goal of our preseason, is to really, put players in as many varied challenges as we can find and see how they deal with them. And then, quite honestly, see how they aggregate. Like, who complements each other and who has that unwritten stuff that we can't make a statistic that just they're better together when they're on the field. That's a huge time for us to sort of figure out that, so we can figure out the sort of the hidden bonuses we could have by different combinations of players in different segments of the fields.
Interesting. I'm going to start asking that a lot more, because I find that interesting, right? Like, I would guess, like, there are guys who step up by naturally, right? Like, they're your guys, right? They're the top 3 players are always going to be outstanding. It's just that I'm always wondering about the rest of them and how do they elevate themselves in a preseason where you're looking at 40 guys and, what have you. So, anyhow.
But you'll see, like, the confidence of somebody, like, who say you could be a middle of the pack person. If they come and they win the beep test and they just kill it, I mean, they're smiling from ear to ear for the next 2 or 3 days. They just boosted themselves, and that's one of the things about long term in the season too. But it starts right there. Is guys know it's always a meritocracy, and that doesn't change. And you look at some players played themselves out of time later in the season, whereas some players played themselves into time later in the season. So I think, them understanding that there's always opportunity there, but then making sure that we give them the information they need to get there is the important part.
That's true. You do. It works in the reverse, right? Like, you play yourself out. You're not doing the things that you need to do. All right, Coach. Like I said, Christmas time is here. Spread the Christmas cheer. I do appreciate you taking the time on this Friday, 3 days before So appreciate the time. Thank you very much. Really love seeing you guys make it as far as you did. It's always, I think you and your men very highly when it comes to soccer. So it was really great to see all that hard work. And yeah, thanks again for coming today.
All right. Well, always good to talk, and hope you and your family have very happy holidays.
Yep. You as well. All right, Coach.
All righty. We'll see you.